shadow.
I got some new things. You should take a look. You must choose my skill.
Set out in 1 week's time into the desolate sands to search for Kuhl's hidden archives. None of us have any idea what to expect. How far has Kuhl's madness driven him? How much power has he accumulated in his mad quest? I can only hope we are not too late.
Mic check. Okay, mic's working. I was so pumped to talk about Skinwalker Ranch, I forgot to plug the damn mic in. Last night's episode, now I fell it now again, this isn't because I was bored, I got health issues, but doing this rehab for my foot's really been wearing my foot out, or wearing me out. And like today is a day where I'm just going to stretch it. I'm not putting the boot on, won't be doing any walking. And, I was kind of wore out last night. The cats, they didn't piss on the floor to be honest, but they pissed on the cardboard, and I cleaned all that up yesterday, and it wore me out. I got it done. I kind of told the one cat, I go, hey, when I get better, this has got to stop. Because if I have to keep doing this, when my foot gets better, I'm just going to start getting rid of cats. Because right now, I'd take him now, but with my broken foot, I just don't want to deal with it. I don't want anybody else to do it. And I'd also, when I get them back, you know, if we're going to put them down, I'd like to bury them here so they're with the other pets. But if they're getting too old to use the litter box, then, you know, it's time. I'm really sorry about that, but I fell asleep about halfway through Skinwalker Ranch last night, so I completely missed Beyond Skinwalker after. And I gotta say, I got like one minor issue, and it's really a minor issue, and the fact that I may not know what I'm talking about is more than enough for any reasonable person, everybody listening, anybody else, to ignore it. But on the ranch, they brought in a guy, and I think he's done other stuff for him. Well, he got some new tech, and I kind of reach out to the guy who owns the ranch every now and then. It's no more than once or twice a week, and usually not even that. And I don't bug him too much when the season isn't on. But I mentioned, because like I think it was the first season. Definitely, if it wasn't the first season, I think it was second season. Travis, the one scientist they brought in to begin the show, he had mentioned that they could build a satellite. And they built a satellite. They could build a satellite and they can get it put in space for free as a secondary payload. Because of his experience with NASA, he knows how to get that done. And here we are on season 4, at least 2 seasons later, and they still haven't even built the fucking satellite. You got to get it built, and then, and again, maybe NASA told them no. It could very well be. But I just mentioned, like, hey, this was mentioned, back in the day. You should really get that built, because I don't know what you're going to want to put on it, but I go, having something that can routinely, because I mean, in theory, they should be able to stand for the magnetics. They should be able to stand for a whole bunch of other stuff. And I told them, I go, there's been satellites used around the world to find underground structures. And I go, that's something that, you could really be helped out with. And, well, last night, this new technology, this guy, brand new, it sounds like, and the way he made it sound, it's not generally used, it's mostly used for, like, growing food, like farmers, crops, that kind of thing. But it can let you know differences in the soil, the crops, and all that, and it's an indication of where there's been digging or where there's problems in the ground, and he showed it. And what they found was, and this is kind of, now again, I think it was a different technology I was talking about, but this one does the same thing, but still, getting that satellite down and having another way to measure it might show more, it would confirm it. But what happened was, there were 3 circles where, if I was understanding again, I might have got this wrong, there were 3 circles. Hang on a sec. There were 3 circles where it was better soil. And then the one guy, he noticed some circles where it was bad. Where like there was bad soil. So the stuff that was there might not grow as well. But Travis featured on the ones that were in the good zone, because it was like, the lighter it was, it sounded like the better the crops were, the better nutrition they had, and the darker areas were where the soil nutrition was worse. And I think it was a spectrograph or something like that is what they did. And what happened was, there was another thing they noticed. There were what looked like straight lines. And when they got talking about it, they were wondering if the previous owner, Bigelow, had like dug them. So they went out, and the lines, I mean, they looked perfectly straight. They looked perfectly east to west. So the guy that took the pictures, he's like, well, maybe we go out there and take a look. And I don't know if it was him or somebody else on the ranch, but they suggested that maybe they dig north to south. and then that way they might intersect whatever those lines were. And what they found was they found a layer that did not look natural. And again, you might not. This is the easiest way for me to understand it.
I don't
If you
have
look
enough
at tree, if
snips.
you cut a tree in half, or you get a core sample from a tree, you can count the rings, and there'll be like one ring for every year of the tree. Gives you the rough age. Well, there's also, like, if you notice something, if you notice a layer that's different, that might indicate a flood, a drought, a fire. You know, it will indicate something happened, and that's what this looked like. You know, that's what this absolutely looked like. And and they started digging, and they found that. Well, they also found, I think it was ceramics, was another thing that they found buried there. And it's hard for me with the equipment I currently have access to because of my foot. It's hard for me, but that I thought was important enough where I could go do a couple short tweaks. And even then, you know, my web page sometimes crashes. It crashed at least once. So I had to retype everything to get it in.
I need spinach.
And well, anyways, what happened was they're digging it with a big old backhoe and just fucking wrecking it. I just suggest they go, you know, now that you found something, maybe you do some core samples around the area looking for other spots. Like if that's one of those lines, you could do core samples in an east to west area. And but I mentioned, I go, maybe you do something like some careful digging like an archaeologist, because I go, you might learn more from that layer if you can uncover it intact instead of breaking it up with the backhoe. Maybe you'll get more information if you dig a little more carefully. And so I tweeted that out to him, and then and I can't remember, it's on my personal Twitter, so I'm not going to really talk about it here, but otherwise I should have done it on my my gaming one, and then I could tell you to go check it out. But this is more of a personal thing than a gaming thing. But there was that, and then the other thing was, and I mentioned because they on the Beyond Skinwalker, they basically looked at another property that aerospace billionaire Bigelow had bought. And when they talked to the current owner, they said, well, yeah, we understood Bigelow owned this at some time. And he said he bought this one within 2 weeks of buying Skinwalker. He bought both ranches around the same time. And he showed them. They flashed him up on the screen. He goes, I have got a lot of pictures of him investigating here. And, you know, so they put those up. So he was investigating there just like he was investigating at Skinwalker Ranch. And and he mentioned that, you know, he constantly has gotten off and on gotten calls from the scientists, and they go, well, you're not a scientist. And he's like, no. And they go, well, why are the scientists calling you? And he goes, well, these are people that were here. And he goes, they keep calling every now and then and asking me if I found anything. And he goes, well, what do you think they're expecting you to find? And he said that they think there's a UFO buried here. That was what he said. They think there's a UFO buried there. And I mentioned that, I think it was George Knapp. Might have been somebody else, but I think George Knapp basically said that Bob Lazar thought, either was sure or thought, that one of the spaceships that he claims they were working on at Area 51 was like from an archaeological dig. Something they found buried on there, like old, not something that recently crashed, but something that was buried. You think they got the new Indiana Jones movie out, so it's not, it's in that theory. And but I mentioned that, to keep in mind, and then the stuff they found on that second show. I told him, I go, I'm not going to say it's a UFO. I'm not going to say it's anything that was in the air. But when you look at what they found at that other site and what they found on Skinwalker Ranch, I think they're gathering more and more, at least circumstantial evidence, maybe not hard proof, but I think they're gathering more evidence that there's something under the ground. It could be a meteorite, could be an old civilization, maybe something akin to Atlantis or something like that. But because this is the thing, they got the results back. I think this was on last night's episode. I might be wrong, but they got when they were doing that drilling the other day, and they were trying to come in on top of what stopped them last year. The Tom guy, he took something off the head of that drill bit, and they got it back. Well, one of the things that Travis commented on is that there was so much in that was a good conductor. Whatever that thing that was stuck to the front of the drill bit, it's got, it's pretty good conductor of electricity. That was the thing he had commented on. And they were talking about that. And then the other thing that they were talking about, and they've done this in the past, I don't know if it was necessarily on last night's episode, but in the past, he's brought up that a lot of this stuff that they encounter, like when they send stuff out for testing, he goes, like there was one of them, he looked at what was in it, and he made a comment about something that they found in the thing, and Eric goes, I thought you might find that peculiar. But he said, you take any modern day fighter, you're going to find this in it. You should find the same stuff that we're finding buried on the ranch.
Some say they
you're
are
finding
part
it here.
Man and part wolf. But I have not been able to confirm it with my own eyes. Whatever their origin,
so they were talking
the
about
destruction
that.
they leave in their wake suggests that we are right to fear the worst.
I hope you haven't brought bad fortune on yourself, destroying things like that. I've seen these cultists around. I think they serve a powerful...
That ability is not yet recharged. Not enough
Gotta
spirit.
purge these guys.
I need to go back.
And then there's other things. He's like, oh my God, this is stuff you would find in computer equipment, advanced computer equipment, stuff that'd be in, high-tech labs and that. And that's what they're finding. And the way they're talking, either it's stuff you don't find in nature. It's not a naturally, at least on Earth, they don't know it to be a net, or it's something that is in a state that you don't find in nature. Like, you might find that element in nature, but you don't find it processed like that in nature. And so that was, but the one thing that was interesting last night, and I'm really, I almost don't want to say nothing because I don't want to get anybody in. I mean, I really don't. But I think Travis may have slipped a little bit. I think he covered it. I think he covered it really, really good. And probably to the point where they might hopefully wouldn't be able to do anything. but he made a comment because this was when the Beyond Skinwalker guys did their show and they reported back to the ranch. Oh, the game froze up. And but he made a comment because the guys went there, and I'm just going to talk about the show. I'll get to what Travis did a little later, but they did the show, and one of the things they found was hold on one sec. Okay, thanks, Jess. And they did the show, and yeah, please. And first thing they found was, and I do not, just for the sake of expediency, I may sometimes slip up and call it a tricoder because I'm a Star Trek nerd at heart. But I think it's called a tri-field meter. And the guy on Beyond Skinwalker, the one who has a CIA and I think an Air Force background, he's a CIA investigator, I think is what they said. But, you know, let's be honest, I think that's what he was, because he seems to be pretty good at it. But if he was someone out there posing as James Bond, he'd probably have to say the same thing. Well, you know, maybe then he'd have to admit that he was like a State Department official or somebody. He basically claims to be a CIA investigator, and he seems to be doing a pretty good job. So I honestly believe it. You know, I really do. And but anyways, what happened was he's measuring something, and I don't think it was the magnetic level, but that's what they were talking about later. But the way he was talking, he's like, oh, you know, this stuff's a little high, but, you know, he made a comment that 0.4, whatever, was high, but within like acceptable, you know, it's like, wasn't anything out of the ordinary, it was just high. And then I think it was the guy who owned the ranch, and this ranch they were looking at, it was like 80 miles from like Roswell, or 80 miles from Area 51. It's very, very rural. And so if you read Douglas Adams' book, you know, this is the perfect place that a teaser would come down. You know, a teaser would come down in a spaceship and land out in the middle of nowhere where nobody's going to believe the guy that, you know, he showed himself to. And that's where they were. It was the one that Bigelow had bought, you know, just so we're all on the same page here. And what happened was, let me double check. Yeah, I should be able to get to it from here, I hope. And they
The storm breaks.
you know, the guy goes, well, why don't you step down in the river? There's like a stream or something there. And he stepped down, well, it jumped up to 1.7, and that guy's like, okay. He goes, if they're telling me that 0.4 is high, he goes, this is 400 times, at least 400 times higher. He goes, this is an eye-opener. This is not something acceptable.
I don't have enough spirit. I am returning to town.
And so that was the first thing. Well, then they brought in a guy, and I can't remember if this guy was at Skinwalker Ranch. I honestly, because it could have been somebody I just saw. I didn't recognize him. But what I'm wondering is, because he was there measuring the magnetic field. And from what I remember, there was a guy... There was a guy that came up to him a season or two ago, and he said he was measuring something in the area, and he wanted to know if he could come in and measure the magnetic field, because he said, I'm measuring all these anomalies and they're all pointing, like, I think he surrounded the ranch. He measured in all these areas around the ranch, and they all pointed to the ranch. And so he wanted to know if he could come on, and they, well, yeah, you share your deal with us? He said, absolutely. And so he shared,
these cultists will
when he got all done, he shared what he had taken out of the range
Some call
that
the
led him
process
there, I think,
ascension,
if I remember.
a lie that no doubt buys them obedience. But mark my words,
and then what he did
these
was,
abominations have not ascended.
He showed him what he
They
found there, and he
will
found some.
only
He
suffer
found like a
and
magnetic anomaly
until
where the
they meet
triangle
their
was.
final death.
There were 2 or 3 spots on the ranch where the magnetics were just noticeably not good.
The gods strike through me. My path becomes clearer. Ha! A vicious strike.
And so they got that, but that guy that was doing the magnetic thing, he had like a drone, and he was gonna fly it with that magnetic, the thing that measured the magnetic thing, and it's supposed to fly like a pattern. He brought that, and almost immediately, now again, I don't know how much they filmed before this, but almost immediately, that drone started having issues. They said it honestly looked like it was trying to fly through an invisible wall. And it was acting up. Finally he said, well, I'm gonna hover it for a minute. Well, shortly after he hovered it, it started flying, because he said he was gonna bring it back, and it like flew the other direction, started acting really weird, and then finally flew into a tree. When they recovered it, it had lost a rotor, ripped out wiring. I think a motor was either missing, or it was either a motor or a rotor was missing. They had something damaged, they had something missing, and I heard them say that they had ripped wires out. And it's like, oh my God. And so he goes, well, we can walk it by hand. He goes, it should be just as good, but it'll just take longer. And there were 2 old guys with this group, and then there was a younger guy. He goes, we'll just have the kid do it. Yes, that's what they got the young guy for anything physical. They just stand it on him. And so they did that. Well, then they got their readings, and what it did was, because again, they had heard rumors, or he basically let them know that there were people that were concerned that there was like tunnels there, and maybe a buried UFO. And I got to be honest with you, when I was down in Indiana, it was a local Indiana person. He put up that they had pictures of the Dulce, New Mexico hidden base, the entrance to it. You know, so that, you know, he was part of that group of true believers that think there's all these hidden, and I don't know. I all I can say is I haven't seen them. That one show on the History Channel. I think he's on Travel or Discovery now, but he used to have a show on History Channel. I think it was Unearthed America or something like that. He was at the Denver airport, and he had heard all these stories that about these underground tunnels, and he was talking to somebody from the airport, and she said, yeah, she goes, there's a lot of reports on that. and she goes, there's no underground tunnels. And according to her, she goes, when they built this place, they either spent like several million or $1 billion trying to create this below ground luggage system where, you know, it wouldn't be like a normal airport. They'd have this fancy little thing underground that would take care of all the luggage.
More than what I seemed.
And what happened was they could never get it working. So she goes, the stories for us, she goes, I can't speak to anywhere else, but she goes, the stories to us, it must have been people that accidentally or snuck down or whatever. And she said, and she goes, I don't know what I can do to put this to rest. He goes, can we take the cameras down there? She goes, let me make a call, but she goes, I am pretty sure we can absolutely take the cameras. So she went down and showed them, and it did it. You know, again, they could have been lying to us, could have been a good cover story. I don't know. But it was on film. I'm going to treat that as evidence until somebody comes up with something better. But it really did look like a luggage system. You know, it wasn't moving. You know, it was, but it did look like that. That was something they did.
It is not ready yet.
And so I don't know. And all I can think of is there was an episode of the X-Files, and I can't think of the actor's name, but he was in Laverne and Shirley. He was one of the two little nitwits on there. He was in Spinal Tap. He was in
I need spirits.
it was some movie they made about those dog shows. It was kind of like the Spinal Tap about dog shows. And I can't think of the dude's name. Well, he was a secret agent for the government, and he swapped bodies with Mulder. And you know, he was part of the team that was keeping shit hidden from everybody. And there's when Mulder goes and meets with the lone gunman, there's a scene in there where
I must wait to use that ability.
He told him he's reading their latest edition of the Lone Gunman, and he's reading it, and he goes, oh God, and he sort of muttered it under his breath. He goes, you guys don't know how much of the shit you print I thought up while I was on the toilet. And so, you know, and the thing is, and this is, I'm not sure I got what you could call facts. I think we do. Well, because he came forward, you know, but let's just say I firmly believe this, and we'll leave it at that. There was a guy back in the day, and his last name was Doty. I think he was a colonel in the military. His first name might have been Richard, but I'm not sure. Well, he's admitted that he was basically a disinformation guy. He was absolutely a guy that, you know, lied and misdirected, you know, people that were trying to figure out the truth about aliens and UFOs and this whole thing. And so, you know, like, you know, they're saying, oh, there's the underground tunnel. Oh, maybe there are, you know, but let's, you know, I'm not going to believe it till I see some proof. And again, if they find a UFO and they fly it out and show it to us, I will absolutely believe it. But I will say that the evidence they're finding in the dirt, it does appear that there might be something buried at that place, and there might be something buried at Skinwalker because of the stuff that is leaching off into the dirt and the mud. So I think there might be something there. I don't know, but I think it's possible. I don't think you're crazy for saying, well, you know, the circumstantial evidence does kind of... Rare two-handed. Okay. And when I was down there in Indiana, again, to finish that story, there was somebody down there that said, oh, they had secret photos of the entrance to the underground tunnels under Dulce, New Mexico. And I think it was NORAD. I think it was the stock footage that the military provided. Somebody else made, because I go, look, that looks like the stock footage from Stargate SG-1. And I go, if it is, that's not Dulce, New Mexico, that's NORAD. And somebody else goes, yeah, that I couldn't remember where I saw it, but they go, yeah, I think that's from Stargate SG-1 too. And so you got to take a lot of this with a grain of salt. You really do. And so there was that. I mean, it was really good. Both episodes, I watched them. I fell asleep again this morning, but I finally watched both of them this morning. And oh my God, they were both really, really good. They really were. And
That ability is not yet recharged. I don't have enough spirit.
And so that was that. Very, very interesting. And the other thing is when they found those magnetic drops, where they thought it was, the guy said, look, you won't know until you know, but he goes, these could be indications of voids. And he goes, and you said you were looking for tunnels. He goes, got two good spots for you to check out. These could be entrances to a tunnel. They might not be, but he goes, it's at least possible. And
endless time.
The area that they were at, they knew when they went, they only had a few days because there was predicted a storm would be coming in like 6 days after they landed. And to me, they should have waited. This is the only real, and again, I'm not an expert. Anybody and everybody should just feel fine in writing off what I'm saying as stupid.
Not enough spirit.
But they were worried that they wouldn't have enough time to dig and look for a tunnel like the Oak Island guys do. And so they asked the owner if they could blow shit up. And I gotta tell you, I'm of mixed feelings with this because I thought it was so fucking sweet. Tim Allen and Dennis Leary would approve of them blowing that shit up. It was pretty cool. And at one point, the guy said, he's got the dynamite, and he goes, well, I can put these on them, and they'll really increase the explosion of the dynamite. And the one guy from the show, just his eyes got kind of wide, but he goes, I really don't want to blow things up in class because I'm trying to open a tunnel, so he won't be using this. Well, they did some initial explosions, and then he brought in 2 bundles of dynamite.
I need spirit.
That were bigger than a fucking basketball. And he wired one up and threw it in one spot, and he wired the other up through it. So they're doing the same thing to both entrances. And one of them looked like it may be caved in. And they did find something. They won't know until maybe next year if they can come back. But they did find something. The other entrance, potentially, they think that one might have been sealed.
Not enough
because
spirit.
They said that they've seen it where when you close the mine, you put wood up. You basically put up a wood barrier, you fill it in, so like kids or other people can't go in there and get lost or get hurt. And that's what it appeared, because when they blew it up, there was like, I guess, sawdust like everywhere. And so there was the issue with that. And The only thing I'm thinking of is, it's like, yeah, maybe they should have waited till next year. Maybe they should have put some cameras on it. Maybe they should have took some samples. I don't know. But if there was anything, and it doesn't look like there were, there'd be debris. But they didn't know what they were going to find. Well, if there was something there, like a plaque or instructions, a map, it would have all been blown up. That's the only real if I have on it. But they didn't find any debris, or at least they didn't show it if they did. So I don't think it hurt anything. But to me, it should have been one of those things. And then when they got back, Eric was like, well, maybe we can set up, he wants to set up some permanent data collection there. And he was saying if the owner's agreeable, he goes, you know, maybe we could even hook it into the nerve center so we'd be getting like live information there. And so that might be a thing. But that was the only thing. Well, then when they were reporting it to the guys at the ranch, I don't think they had this when they were there. I think this was something, and you get it the same way with Skinwalker Ranch. They sometimes discover stuff, but you don't see it for an episode or so before it comes back from the lab. So it's not on that episode, it's on a future episode. And I think that was the same thing here. I think there was stuff they discovered while they were in a hurry to get whatever information they could. And they said to this show that the big emphasis they have is to discover what they can and hopefully support the investigation at Skinwalker Ranch. You know, that is their priority. They're looking for stuff that definitely links in with Skinwalker Ranch, and they're doing a really good job of it. But they showed them the sensor data, and I don't know if this was magnetics, but it was one of those things where they had a picture, and the picture, it had like black to yellow, whatever, and every color indicated something. Like there was a middle point, and then you had low spots and high spots. Well, there was some shit that was like a light colored blue, I think it was. And they go, this has been interestingly found. Well, as soon as Travis saw it, he goes, that's not something that's caused by nature. He goes, that is clearly man-made. And he said, you know, you won't know unless you dig it up. But he said, it looks to me, and I don't know, I can't remember exactly what he called it. It was I think it was some kind of a radar equipment. And he made the comment that he had that's what it was. He thought based on the size and shape of the pattern. But he said usually you don't find those underground. Usually they're above ground. And at some point in there, they made the comment that if Bigelow has, see, the thing is, a lot of the equipment they're using this. Hang on, a lot of the equipment that they're using might not have existed 5 years ago. Some of it, these guys that they're bringing in, they don't even have it. You know, they didn't even have it this first season of this. It's stuff they're just getting now. So some of it is, and they've mentioned that some of the stuff that these people bring in on the ranch, it's stuff they made. If they hadn't made it, it wouldn't exist. Like ground penetrating radar, there's been at least 2 people they brought on. They go, yeah, these guys made this. This is not some equipment that they bought. And that one guy, he does it's underground radar. It's pretty widely used in the mines. You know, people that are drilling for oil and mining for whatever. They find it good enough that they bring him in to do that. So some of this is just brand new equipment. Bigelow wouldn't have had access to it. I don't know what he did and what he didn't, but some of it is pretty new. And so, but they said, they go, yeah, I think if Bigelow had found this, he wouldn't have sold it. He'd still be there investigating it. And this is the thing I think Travis kind of screwed up on. He made a comment that is what crashed the Roswell UFO. I think I'm almost word for word. If not word for word, I'm pretty freaking close. But he talked about how, you know, it was radar that caused the Roswell UFO to crash. And then there was a pregnant pause. He goes, well, if the stories are true. And because there was something else he did, and I don't think it was on Skinwalker. I think it was on one of the Ancient Alien shows.
I don't have enough space.
I had heard it mentioned before, so he was on that one there. I wasn't as worried. Like this one here, it's like he might have let something slip he wasn't supposed to. And
it is not ready yet.
I don't know, but they made the comment.
I must wait to use that ability.
Well, like they were talking about, and I had heard this before on Ancient Aliens. So again, even if he let something slip, it had been mentioned before on the show. He's got perfectly good cover for what he said. On some of the shows, they have talked about that when astronauts get outside the Earth gravity, when they are in space, their body clock no longer is linked to Earth. They are no longer linked to a 24-hour day. And they said that when they're in space, they suddenly have a Martian clock. And I don't know if it was him or somebody else, but this I believe was on Ancient Aliens. And but what they had mentioned was that, like, many of the animals here on Earth, usually the first day or two, the animal can walk.
I need spirits.
Where with humans, you know, it's months, if not over a year. And in fact, you know, the neck is so weak that it has to be protected. And they said that's not normal for most animals that are born here. They and you know, like your dogs and your cats are kind of the same way. You know, so maybe they didn't evolve here. Maybe they came from somewhere else. That's me. I didn't get that off any of the shows. I'm just adding that in there. But and he was pointing out that if you look at the sun, we're one of the few animals on the planet where if you look at the sun, you can actually damage your eyes. And you know, at normal Earth temperature in most places, your body will create good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. You know, where if your body temp, if the room you're in is got a lower temp, you only create good cholesterol. That's what they were saying. And the temp below which that happens is the average temp on Mars at the equator. And he was kind of hinting that, you know, he made a comment, well, you know, when we get these missions to Mars, we might not be going to Mars, we might be returning to Mars. And again, that one there, I wasn't, but this one here where he just matter-of-factly said, well, yeah, it was radar that crashed the Roswell UFO. And then there's that pregnant pause. Again, I might not have a word for word, but I think I'm really close. And then there's that pregnant pause. Well, the stories are true. That on there at the end, it's like, ooh. Somebody might have got in trouble with their security clearance if they hadn't caught that quick.
is not ready yet. Not enough spirit. That ability is not yet recharged.
Yeah, that guy just...
I must wait to use that ability.
You must choose my
That was another thing. I kind of reached out to him a couple weeks ago, like at least a week or two ago, and mentioned a few things. And then a couple episodes later, they're already doing something that'll either do the same thing, cheaper probably, or and it was just earlier this week, I think. And that was the end of last week, but I had mentioned Mr. Bugle, Brandon Bugle, that with this 1.6 megahertz thing, because they did this last week. It was definitely after last week's episode of Beyond Skinwalker. That I mentioned to him, I go, well, yeah, these guys did not do the Hebrew ceremony that triggered the heat problem. They did the 1.6
That ability
megahertz.
is not yet recharged.
So that might be why you got different results, because they weren't doing the same thing. The guy said, he goes, it wasn't as drastic a heat change and it didn't last as long. He said the temperature spiked and then went back down, which is not what happened at the ranch. Well, yeah, because at the ranch, I'm not entirely sure they had discovered that 1.6 transmission.
It is not ready yet.
face another trial, my friend.
And but I mentioned, I go, now, if all you want to do is jam them, or confuse them, then yeah, you guys keep broadcasting that 1.6 megahertz thing. I go, that's fine if that's all you want to do. But I go, if you're trying to communicate with them, I go, you're not showing any intelligence. And they might end up writing you off as somebody worth contacting, because I go, you instead of trying to communicate with them, you are just constantly broadcasting the same message. And if it isn't the same one, you're constantly broadcasting one of their messages.
That ability is not yet recharged. must wait to use that ability.
I might put some on this.
It is not ready yet. I must wait to use that ability.
Yeah, they definitely upped the difficulty in that last update, because I didn't have this much trouble before the update on Torrent 1. I think I'm either on normal or I'm on
It is not
hard.
ready yet.
Long ago, I would open rifts with the Nephilim to help them train for battle. They fought bravely, facing
Both
down
of those
enemies
episodes,
in
like I
places
said, if you
known
haven't
for the
watched them,
deepest corners
check them
of their
out.
memories.
They were really, really good.
Ours is a race of great power, but we are nothing unless we temper it with skill. If you are to achieve your birthright, then conquer the excellence.
We got lunch coming up. What I'll do is I'm actually having a relatively decent day today so far. But again, this is a day where I don't generally put the boot on. I don't walk around. And even that is a little too much sometimes. But so far, I'm having a good day. I may or may not get online later. It just depends. But peace out, and hope everybody is having a really good day.